Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Tuhami, author of Midway Simplicity, and welcome to a new episode of the Midway Decluttering Show, where you will find practical tips that will help you declutter your first 100 items. And today my very special guest is Miriam Ortiz Ipino from morethanorganized.net, and she's one of the awesome contributors to my book Midway Simplicity. Welcome Miriam, it's an honor and pleasure to have you again.
Thanks. I'm excited to be able to do this again.
So let's start by your decluttering story. How did you start, and how did you get rid of your first 100 items?
Well, for me, the biggest impetus to decluttering has been moving. The two times I did the most major decluttering, I would say, was because I was moving. And why move a bunch of stuff you don't want or need? So I took a little bit of a bigger picture vision of it. And then at a certain point in the mid-90s, I actually discovered the voluntary simplicity movement. And so even though I lived in a tiny place and didn't have a whole lot, I got rid of even more because I started evaluating everything I had based on what it was doing for me, not just because I could own it. And that really helped. And yeah, I think I got rid of 100 items in about 10 minutes the first time I did the voluntary simplicity method of looking at it. The move, it was here and there. Some stuff would go. I'd go to the other room and a few other things would go. But having said that, I've never had that much trouble letting go of things like some people do. So I've had to learn other strategies for my clients.
And what was your biggest challenge when you started decluttering?
For me, a lot of the things I held on to were for projects that I wanted to do and was waiting for the time and or money to get the rest of the stuff I needed to do the project. I'm not the kind of never do a project, but I tend to think a little bit longer term, so I accumulate the pieces I'm going to need for it as I find them. And at a certain point, I had just a few too many projects going that were like that, and I had to really decide, okay, I'm only going to accumulate the things for one at a time. That helped.
Yeah. Let me share with you some of the challenges that I received from my readers when it comes to decluttering. So one of them is I'm overwhelmed by too much stuff that I own, so I cannot think of starting the decluttering work. There's too many things that I need to get rid of or sort out. So how do you solve this issue for your clients, for example?
I think it makes it a lot easier if you think smaller when you start. It's really about just what's easy to get rid of. Start with the easy stuff and then move to the stuff that's more intense and difficult to think about. And if it's overwhelming because there's so much stuff in the area you're trying to declutter, take a pile from that area to a clearer space and make the decisions in the clear space and then take it back to where it actually belongs. It's just one of those, the actual physical stuff can have that overwhelming energy shooting at you, and then you can't decide what you want to keep or not just because it's in the way.
That's a nice tip. So now another challenge that maybe you are the expert in, which is somehow people lack organizational skills. So no matter doesn't matter how much they declutter, things seem to be everywhere, scattered everywhere, because they don't have the organizational skills. So what's your advice on that?
Well, it is a learned skill. It is not actually something we're born with. Some of us are born seeking order, but we don't know how to get that order until we play with it and learn and read and or try it. And I find that most of my clients that struggle with being able to keep order give up. The first time they put their keys in the wrong place, they get upset and they give up. And, well, I'll never be able to do it. They talk themselves out of it instead of saying, oh, I need to practice that again tomorrow till I learn it. So that's one of the tips. The other is to think about it not in terms of being perfect and everything straight and labeled and put away at all times. It's how do I make it useful for what I do and then return it to the place it will be useful for me the next time I need it. Not leave it out till I need it again, but where will it be when I need it again? And it's just simple changes of the way you ask yourself or talk to yourself about your stuff and your relationship to it that can make all the difference in being and staying organized.
Great. And what about, you don't have the energy to do the decluttering work. You have too many tasks to do, too many like people to take care of, like kids and children, and you work from 9 to 6, and you don't have either the time nor the energy to start doing any decluttering work. So what can you do?
Well, think about it this way. It's a bit of a catch-22 in that the more you declutter and get organized, the more time you will have to spend with your kids and your family, and the more energy you'll have because you're not stressed by your stuff all the time. So to get started, though, I know it's hard, but you can't think of it as separate. Being organized is actually a way of life that allows you to do all that other stuff. It's the foundation. It's where the items you need to do those things are and how easy it is to use them. And if you take the time to set that up and create systems and routines about how you're dealing with your stuff, you can ignore it for short amounts of time when you're sick, if you're on vacation, if something, an emergency comes up with the kids. You can ignore it for a little while and get back on track very quickly. A couple weeks ago on my own blog, I was talking about a client that the first time we worked together, it took us 6.5 hours to go through her home office. And then she had an illness and things, and so it was a few months before I got back to her house, and her office had slid back a little bit. And she wanted to start with redoing that to catch herself back up. Well, it only took us about 35 minutes the second time we did it. So that's where you have to think that it's going to have a future payoff. I do this now, I'm tired, I'm going to do it anyway. For 10 minutes, everyone can find 10 more minutes in their day. I don't know a single person that can't find 10 more minutes in their day. I mean, I heard recently that Richard Branson answers his own email because he can always find an extra 10 minutes in the day. I'm like, that blows my mind. Think about it in terms of small chunks of time to declutter will save you hours next year, next week, next month.
Yeah. Always setting your side to the purpose, the bigger purpose, why you are decluttering will help you find the motivation, the time, the energy to do the work.
Right. I mean, you have time to order the pizza in and leave the box on the counter.
Yeah.
It only takes another 2 seconds to put the box in the recycle bin.
Yeah.
It's just as much time to put it in the right place as it is to put it in the wrong place.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And what if I'm living in a consumer-based environment and I'm facing high resistance from family and friends and close people? They cannot understand what I'm doing, getting rid of stuff and living simply, and minimalism, frugality, and all these expressions. So, how to face this resistance?
I always do it with some humor and to make sure I stand firm in my own power of why I made that choice. So I choose to live simply, and that doesn't mean I deprive myself of anything ever. I might have to wait a little bit for something, but I don't deprive myself. I choose which item will serve me best, which item I like best, which item makes me smile and happy and dance. I don't buy things just because they're there. It has to resonate with me in terms of helping me, and it's a choice I make. So I always think of it more in terms of quality over quantity. I'd rather have one great purse than 30 that I spent $100 on each, and so I'm keeping them, and none of them work right or go with any of my outfits or whatever, I look for the one item that serves exactly the purpose I need it to serve.
Yeah, yeah. And what about getting rid of sentimental items that we no longer need, like things like items that are associated with good memories, items that are precious and valuable, items that we received as valuable gifts from people we love. So how to get rid of this stuff if we no longer need them?
Okay. This is where we get into talking about truth and beauty. But really, is it an item that truly reminds you of the person that gave it to you? And I'm going to use kind of gift cards as one example because it's something that everyone recognizes and knows what it is. If you get a gift card that says, "To Mohammed from Mom," that's one kind of gift card. If you get one that says, "To my darling Mohammed, this gift reminded me of the day we spent so-and-so, at this place with so-and-so. Wasn't that a wonderful day? Your loving mother. I'm so proud of you." There's a difference in that message. One evokes an obligation. One evokes an actual memory of a shared event and delight in that time together. And so that's one of those things that you can weed out usually 80% of your old gift cards and things that were given to you by thinking that train of thought. Is this something that represents the two of us spending time together that was great versus the obligation of the gift giving and that kind of thing? Things that were inherited or from your children are sometimes a little bit harder for people to deal with. But in that case, you want to think about, does this remind me of the person? Is this representative of their essence? And am I going to forget them if I don't have this? Because that's what a lot of people say. "Oh, well, my mother gave it to me." Well, that's great. Did she give it to you because she doesn't like it and it didn't resonate with her and she thought you might like it and you don't, but you are keeping it because she gave it to you? Or was it something that actually does represent you or her, and that's the one memory trigger? I think about in America, we have a huge population of Irish that came over on the boat, and one of the things, I'm not really sure why, I've never really investigated it, but it's always in movies and books and things that they brought like their one teacup with them as the memory of the old country. It was like the one precious item they brought with them in their suitcase. They brought their clothes and they brought their teacup. And, they didn't need to bring everything they owned in the old country to remember it. They brought the teacup. So think about it that way, too. It kind of makes me laugh and my clients laugh almost every time when I say, "Well, that's great, but are you going to forget you had a mother if we throw away this shawl she gave you or this thing she knitted you? Or are you going to forget you have kids if you throw away the 37th picture of a horse they drew?" Maybe not.
Yeah,
so it's about picking and choosing the best.
Yeah.
And is it actually a memory or, you get what I'm saying, I'm sure.
Yes,
everyone has those things.
Yes.
It's actually listening to the answers you give yourself when you're asking and not letting yourself off the hook.
That's true. And what about people who can't stay focused? They start the decluttering work 10 minutes a day and they just stay the course for like 3 days and then they give up or they quit or they get distracted by the business of their daily lives and they never resume or be consistent with their decluttering efforts. So
right. I think it's kind of twofold. Connecting it to your bigger picture vision of what you want your life to be helps immensely. Because then every time you stop doing it, you're like, but then I won't be able to whatever your goal was. I think helps huge, especially for people that are motivated by end results. People that are basically kind of lazy and just kind of do it if it's easy, just flip your mind around it and say, this is the easiest way to get it done. Not, I can't believe I have to declutter for another 10 minutes. It's, oh, if I do this real quick right now, there's just that reframe the way you're talking to yourself. And, if you can't focus for 10 minutes, focus for 2. Focus for, do one thing. I have one client that actually tossed one thing a day for a year. And then there would be days where she was totally motivated. Yeah, she was totally motivated other days and would go through a whole garage, or she'd go through a whole closet, or, a whole area. But on the days she wasn't into it, she committed to doing at least one thing every single day.
Yeah. That's very easy, definitely. And I'm sure you face this dilemma with lots of clients you work with, which is the what if dilemma. What if I will need this item in the future? So how do you deal with that?
Right. I'm a big fan of ridiculous memory. I can't remember if I talked about this in our last interview or not, but ridiculous memory is tying your new habit forming and your new decision making on something that will make it seem so absurd that it's easier. So, what if keeping this caused the world to blow up? What if you won $1 million by keeping this? What are these what if scenarios you're thinking of? What if the TV breaks? Well, what if that happens? Run that scenario through your head. Do you need a backup TV? Do you need a backup to your backup to the backup? How many things would have to go wrong for that to be necessary? So by taking it to the extreme, you can really realize, that's never going to happen. I don't need 87 bottles of shampoo. There's always going to be a Walgreens. There's always going to be dish soap in an emergency. There's always going to be, water. What would the minimum be to achieve that same purpose? And how many things would have to happen for that to be actually needed versus in your way?
I like that way, taking it to the extreme to realize that it never really matter. It will never really matter.
Yeah.
So, how to control my purchasing desire? Because if the inflow is always bigger than the outflow, then decluttering is useless. So if I keep on bringing on new items to my home or office, then the value of decluttering just vanishes. So how to overcome my purchasing desires?
I often try to have my clients take a shopping break just so they see that they will not die from not shopping. And to turn it around from a hobby going to the mall to, okay, say you are going to the mall, you want to get out and be interactive with people. What if you never actually went in a store? What if you just walked around the mall during a busy time? What if you window shopped? What if you, try things? But I did that when I first started practicing voluntary simplicity. I worked in a retail environment, so it was real easy to pick up a bunch of stuff. But I just declared 30-day, I'm not going to buy anything except, absolute necessities like food. And see what happens. And I used up a bunch of my sample products. I ate all the food that was lingering in the back of the pantry. I, did not miss it at all. And so it was a lot easier to then shop at a normal pace because you became aware of that you don't need it. It helped establish needs versus wants very clearly. So there's that. And then it's another example of you can take it to the extreme. If every time you buy something and bring something home, a dog dies or a car explodes or, something really bad happens. And then you go, oh, well, is it worth bringing home if all my hair falls out on the left side of my head? Is it worth bringing home if the dog's going to throw up in the other room? I mean, whatever you need to do to make it seem like, I don't really need this.
Wow, I like that. I think I will call this episode Finding Simplicity in the Extremes.
Yes.
To be a nice title for the episode.
Yeah, people that get a little bit afraid of that, I often say, well, is it something you'd be willing to spend $1,000 on?
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you need that extra,
I like that.
T-shirt?
I
If
like that.
would you spend $1,000 on that T-shirt,
Yeah.
or is it only worth a little bit of money? And yeah, that's not worth it.
Hmm. And do you have a kind of like checklist or guidelines or series of questions that you ask yourself to help you decide upon what items you should keep and what items you should get rid of?
Yes. It's kind of two layers. So the first time I go through things, like I said, I always try to have people do the easiest stuff first. So I always ask, is this something you need? Yes, no, or maybe. So the yeses and the nos are real obvious, and then the maybes you just review again later. But the second layer, if it's not a quick decision like that, is do you use it? Actually use it. People tell me all the time, yes, I wear that all the time. And I'm like scraping the dust off the sleeve of that coat or whatever. So be actually honest with yourself. Do you use it regularly? Then I always ask, do you love it? This is where that truth and beauty thing comes in. It doesn't matter what it is. If it makes you smile and your heart sing, you get to keep it. It can be something stupid. It could be something silly. It could be something amazing. But it makes your heart sing, and actually makes your heart sing. Not you think it should make your heart sing because someone gave it to you or because you paid a bunch of money for it, but it never really worked out that way. It has to actually do that. And then if you need it, and need is in there because there are things like diabetic testing strips that no one wants, no one loves, but you have to have it to stay alive. So there's those kinds of things. And by asking those three questions, do you use it, need it, love it, you start that process. But my other favorite one, because people justify their answers to themselves, is what is the absolute worst that could happen if I got rid of this? Not if I keep it, but if I got rid of this. Let's imagine my life without this thing. What would happen? Would the world explode? Or would I just need to run to Walgreens because I was out of lotion 6 months from now? Which one is it?
Yeah, again, the extreme, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And finally, can you share with us like a couple of your favorite decluttering techniques that are not too time consuming?
Yeah, and I'm going to tie it back into the earlier question about how to keep motivated. Because I think, especially people that have a not so neat situation in the first place, when there's lots of piles and lots of clutter around, they get frustrated because they will organize one thing, but there's so much clutter elsewhere in the room that it slides into that space or it falls over, and so it feels like they didn't actually create any space. So what I suggest is always knowing that it's going to get a little worse before it gets better, and just know that. And that way it helps eliminate some of the frustration. But if you work, and I'm going to use a kitchen because it's the most easy to visualize area. Say you do the drawer that holds your silverware, your flatware, and you get everything out of that drawer except the actual knives, spoons, forks, and a couple serving pieces. Keep those in that drawer. Later, when you do the drawer on the other side of the kitchen, where you have your utensils like your spoons and your spatulas and that kind of thing, and you weed that one out, maybe you find a fork. It goes back in the first drawer with the flatware. And or maybe the flatware makes more sense to switch the two, and so you just switch the actual stuff to the other drawer and move everything from that other drawer there. So it's kind of, you clean up an area and know that it may be temporary, or it may be where all the stuff you find in the other drawers goes if it matches that section. Or you have the glasses in one area and the plates in one area, and you run into a glass 3 cabinets down on the right, you then can put the glass with the other glasses. And because you've designated the space, once the shelf is full of glasses, you can go, okay, which of these glasses don't I like? Or do I like the least? and then you can get rid of that one. You still have an assortment of glasses to use. It's in a limited space. You're good to go.
Wow, wow. You have such like straightforward, easy to apply tips, and
Yeah.
I think this is why you are a certified professional organizer, and you really deserve to hold this title. So before we end the call, do you have like final words of wisdom when it comes to simplicity or decluttering that you would like to leave our viewers with?
Yeah. I would say, imagine that feeling you have on vacation when you step into a hotel room and it's got a view, it's got a place to relax, it's got a place to get ready, and it's that feeling of freedom, of anything is possible. You can make that in your own house by just decluttering, and that's all there is to it. It's the stuff or that feeling.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Miriam, thank you so much for your wisdom and the tips that you shared in this episode, and I hope to have you again on another show with a different topic. Thank you so much.
I'd love to.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Tuhami, author of Midway Simplicity, and welcome to a new episode of the Midway Decluttering Show, where you will find practical tips that will help you declutter your first 100 items. And today my very special guest is Miriam Ortiz Ipino from morethanorganized.net, and she's one of the awesome contributors to my book Midway Simplicity. Welcome Miriam, it's an honor and pleasure to have you again.
Thanks, I find them. And at a certain point I had just a few too many projects going that were like that, and I had to really decide, okay, I'm only going to accumulate the things for one at a time. That helped.
Yeah. Let me share with you some of the challenges that I received from my readers when it comes to decluttering. So one of them is I'm overwhelmed by too much stuff that I own, so I cannot think of starting the decluttering work. There's too many things that I need to get rid of or sort out. So how do you
I'm excited to be able to do this again.
So let's start by your decluttering story. How did you start, and how did you get rid of your first 100 items?
Well, for me, the biggest impetus to decluttering has been moving. The two times I did the most major decluttering, I would say, was because I was moving. And why move a bunch of stuff you don't want or need? So I took a little bit of a bigger picture vision of it. And then at a certain point in the mid-90s, I actually discovered the voluntary simplicity movement. And so even though I lived in a tiny place and didn't have a whole lot, I got rid of even more because I started evaluating everything I had based on what it was doing for me, not just because I could own it. And that really helped. And yeah, I think I got rid of 100 items in about 10 minutes the first time I did the voluntary simplicity method of looking at it. The move, it was here and there. Some stuff would go. I'd go to the other room and a few other things would go. But having said that, I've never had that much trouble letting go of things like some people do. So I've had to learn other strategies for my clients.
And what was your biggest challenge when you started decluttering?
For me, a lot of the things I held on to were for projects that I wanted to do and was waiting for the time and or money to get the rest of the stuff I needed to do the project. I'm not the kind of never do a project, but I tend to think a little bit longer term, so I accumulate the pieces I'm going to need for it as I